In breaking news, a 27-year-old Gold Coast woman is facing the death penalty after she was arrested at Bali Airport yesterday, allegedly carrying 4.2 kilograms of marijuana.
Am I ever going to find out who did this?
A young Australian life in ruins. As Schapelle Corby faces life in a Bali prison. Tonight, the case for and against. Startling evidence that never made it to court. You've heard the myths. Now we reveal the truth.
The people saying it don't know us.
And a desperate family's final plea.
I cannot admit to a crime I did not commit.
Innocent?
I don't think Schapelle Corby's guilty.
Or guilty?
I think Corby is guilty.
Your verdict. As we reveal Schapelle's nightmare, the untold story.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Well, it's the case that's captured Australia's interest like no other since Lindy Chamberlain trial. At only 27, Schapelle Corby will learn Friday next week the decision that will determine the course of her life. 3 judges in a packed courtroom in Bali will rule whether she's doomed to long years inside an Indonesian prison or whether she's coming home to her family and friends. Tonight we'll analyse the case, working through the evidence of both defence and prosecution. And everyone plays a part. After reviewing the arguments, you at home will be able to give your verdict whether Schapelle Corby is guilty or innocent. And our audience here in the studio will use the Channel 9 worm to register their opinion. Those details soon. But first, we'll examine the only in-depth interview Schapelle Corby has given. It was with Liz Hayes from 60 Minutes, and Liz will join us shortly. As well, criminal lawyer Chris Neist will overhaul the evidence. We'll talk to Tim Lindsay, an expert on Indonesia's legal system, and Steve Van Apperen, a man whose business is detecting whether someone is lying or telling the truth. And also joining us will be Ron Bakir, the businessman who's bankrolled Schapelle's defence. Later in the show, we'll cross to Bali and talk with Schapelle's mum, Roz, and her sister, Mercedes. First, though, how the Schapelle Corby case has unfolded so far. In early October last year, Schapelle was arrested at Denpasar Airport. Indonesian customs officers found just over 4 kilograms of marijuana packed inside her bodyboard bag. And that was just the start of her nightmare. She didn't know it, but Schapelle Corby left home for what would be the last time on the 8th of October 2004. She arrived at Brisbane Airport at dawn to begin a few weeks' holiday, catching up with her sister Mercedes in Bali.
She wanted a holiday because Dad's sick and it was my 30th birthday, so she wanted to be here. I've been dreading turning 30, so I think, yeah, we were going to have a little barbecue and she just wanted to be here with me.
Corby was travelling with her younger brother James and 2 girlfriends. They were on a 6 a.m. plane to Sydney, where they would then connect with a flight to Denpasar. As well as her suitcase, Corby was carrying the now infamous bodyboard bag containing her board and a pair of flippers. Inside the terminal, she handed over both bags as she checked in with her friends. Her brother had checked his luggage in earlier. They wouldn't see the bags again until she reached Bali. As this photo shows, spirits were high on the flight, but later that day, Mercedes was still impatiently waiting for her sister to arrive at the hotel.
And I was sort of a little bit angry, thinking, what has she done? Give me the wrong hotel name.
But little did Mercedes know her sister's life was falling to pieces. James had picked up the bodyboard bag from the carousel and was carrying it through to the terminal when he was challenged by an Indonesian customs officer. And from here on, there are 2 distinct versions of what happened next. The customs officer told 60 Minutes' Liz Hayes that Corby was reluctant to open her bag.
Do you believe Schapelle Corby knew she had something illegal in her bag?
I'm sure
because when we opened the second zipper, she was already trying to stop the opening of it.
Oh no, I have something inside.
But Corby claims she opened the bag without any hesitation at all, only to be horrified by what she saw inside.
He didn't even ask me to open it. He said to my brother, "Is that your bag? Is that your boogie board?" I'm going, "Ah, yay, I'm so happy. Oh, it's mine. Hey, here you go. Whee." Yep, that's mine.
And James supports his sister's version.
Then she lifted it up on the desk and just zipped it open, and then was just shocked.
The bag contained a 4.1 kilo package of marijuana, double wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic bags. The biggest seizure ever made at Bali's airport.
And then I got a phone call from Katrina, one of the girls travelling with Schapelle, and I thought she was joking first. She was like all upset, and I was like, "Oh yeah, right." And then I could just hear in her voice, and so I said, "Put the policeman on."
Mercedes rushed to the airport, expecting that her sister had a minor visa problem.
She was sort of just sitting there all numb, and I didn't even notice the stuff sitting in the middle of the floor. And I was just thinking there's a mistake or something small. I didn't know what. And then I walked out to see what's going on, like, I'm going to handle this. And the policeman just pointed on the ground, and my legs collapsed. I screamed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
And it was only day one of the nightmare that has seen Schapelle Corby jailed for the past 6 months and the most talked about Australian defendant since Lindy Chamberlain. And for most of that time, she's had to face the death sentence. Although there has now been a show of leniency from prosecutors, there's still the very real chance she could spend the next 15 to 30 years in a filthy Balinese prison. And after more than 7 months, Schapelle Corby's nightmare is coming to its climax. And we'll be asking you at home for your opinion of the Corby case. You can phone us, and the question is, do you believe Schapelle Corby is guilty? Voting will close at midnight. And we'd like to make the point that the Nine Network will not profit from the proceeds of this phone poll. Monies will be going to Father Chris Riley's Youth Off the Streets organisation, which cares for disadvantaged young Australians. Well, we've all seen Schapelle Corby's pleas of innocence to her trial judges and heard the few desperate words she's uttered as she's been shuttled between her cell and the courtroom. But Liz Hayes from 60 Minutes is the only journalist to have sat down with Corby for an in-depth television interview. At the moment, Liz is in Perth on assignment, but joins us now by satellite. Liz, how did she strike you? Thanks for joining us. How did she strike you as a person when you interviewed her?
Good to see you, Mike. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect when I went into the prison to see Schapelle, but what I did find, I think, is a typical Australian girl whom, under normal circumstances, would have a very bright, vivacious personality.
And when you walked out of the prison, after that very long conversation with her, what did you think?
I think she was simply a confused, frightened, very traumatised young woman. I think she was still coming to terms with this nightmare that she was now living. I have no doubt that she was still quite numb about what had occurred.
You mentioned that she was even dispirited almost.
Yes, there are many thoughts going through her mind, and I think one of the things was, I'm only going to hang in here for my family. I mean, I'm not sure I can continue to do this.
Right. And the thing that strikes a lot of people is that there is so much reasonable doubt about this case.
Look, I think it's reasonable for the average Australian to feel that the waters have been muddied, if you like. Recent allegations have contributed to that. And I think that where once Australians might have thought, well, we don't know, now they really don't know. And I think that is the general feeling that I'm getting.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Liz. And Liz Hayes will be back with us shortly as we revisit her 60 Minutes interview with Schapelle Corby. That's after the break. But first, there have been so many rumours, so much innuendo floating around, some smearing, some clearing Schapelle, that tonight we thought we should try to set the record straight on a few of them.
I knew she was there 3 or 4 times.
She's been there about 100 times.
I heard that she'd been to Bali about 5 times throughout the year.
I've heard that she's travelled 6 or so times from Bali.
She's been there a few times.
Quite a few times.
I heard that she's been quite frequent visitor to Bali.
Coming up, the Schapelle interview.